we needed to see many of our patients virtually when we were closed for 9 weeks in New Jersey. We kind of stumbled upon, holy cow, we're glad we have this system. Let's put it on steroids and let's make it work for us for other appointment types that maybe we didn't use it for before.
Hey there, everybody. It's Glenn Krieger here with another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast. And today, as always, we have a very special guest, but today's guest is special-er. And so please put your hands together out there. Give a big round of applause to Dr. Dan Bills. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Glenn. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you here. This has been a long time coming. And as people will find out a little bit later, there's good reason why you're here today. And we'll dive into that in just a little bit. So I always tell people, one of the things you'll hear me say a lot out there is there are people we know of who are famous for their courses, who are famous for what they've done. Think of Ron Ronconi, right? Ron Ronconi has taught practice management for decades. A remarkable man. Think of Ben Fishbein, right? Another guy who has a course that he's had for over 3 years now that people know like, wow, that's a big practice. And we all know, or many of us know people on Facebook. If you're part of the Orthopreneurs Facebook group, you know some of the people out there who have these huge practices that are real big. And then I always say there's people out there that if you met them at a dinner party and you didn't know who they were, you just chat with them and they give some great advice. And you would go home not realizing, because of their humility, that this is somebody who's got it figured out in a way that many of us don't. And they're sort of, quote unquote, the silent killer in the corner of the room. And Dan, I am proud to say that you are one of those people, for those who don't know you. So wear the title proudly of
silent killer?
Yeah, well, cardiac disease, right? You and heart disease.
Yeah, I was feeling honored right up until that moment.
I'm calling you heart disease from now on. Why? Because he's a silent killer. No, but my point though is there are people who speak very loudly about all the things they do, and maybe they're not doing that much. And then there's the people who are really humble and quiet about it, and they're quieter, silent about it, if you will. And you're one of those guys who you've done some remarkable things that we'll get into, that people have a lot to learn from. And yet, you know, nobody would sit there and go, oh my God, you know, he's this, you know, you wouldn't be in there. I wouldn't think of you as a Ben Fishbein or Ron Ronconi or one of these really, really big practices, though you are making a name for yourself for that, because you're so humble about it. You're quiet about it. And even I had to do some digging with you to quite really understand how incredible you are as a human being and as a systems guy. So kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you. Means a lot.
I mean it 100%. And so let's dive in a little bit. Tell everybody out there, if you don't mind, the way I love to start is for you to tell everybody a little bit about your background. You know, a minute or two of why you became an orthodontist, how you ended up in Southern Jersey, just basically south of Philly. And for those of you who are Little League World Series fans, probably about an hour west of Toms River, New Jersey, which, you know, 45 minutes maybe. But anyway, please give everybody some insight about how you end up where you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern New Jersey. So that's kind of why I'm here. I love the area, close to the beach, close to the mountains, although I use the word mountain loosely, but we like to ski, and being able to drive and at least put on skis within 2 hours is a draw for our family. Then we're about an hour from the beach and love the boat in the summertime. So it's a great area for us. Love Philadelphia. We live about 5 minutes from Center City, Philly. So pretty cool town, Haddonfield, New Jersey, for people that know the areas where we live.
Shout out to Haddonfield.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a great place. Bryce Harper lives here. So yeah, that says something about, you know, it's pretty cool area. But we went to Lafayette College for undergrad, so small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. Did not have anyone in the family that was a dentist, never even thought about dental school, was going to be a college professor and teach biology. Kind of thought that was the track I was on. And then my teaching assistant, when I was in my probably late third year of college, got into Penn Dental School. And I just started talking to him about his journey and kind of seemed like a good fit. Both love healthcare, love people, but also even at that point, I thought a career as a full-time academic might be where I was headed. until I chose a private dental school with crazy tuition. Kind of little course correction there. But I went to Harvard for dental school right out of Lafayette, 4 great years in Boston, and then knew pretty early on that orthodontics was where I was headed. So went straight into my residency at the University of Illinois in Chicago. So was there for 3 great years. And then South Jersey and Philadelphia drew me back in. It just seemed like a good fit for me. Their demographics made sense. Obviously, the most densely populated state, lots of mouths, lots of crooked teeth. And for being from the area, knowing the area, having an affinity for the area, it's an acquired taste, like a lot of things. But Jersey was a good fit for me, and it's been awesome. Opened
cool.
one practice from scratch in 2007. So we've got our 15-year anniversary this year, which is pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then I opened 2 more after that. So one de novo, and then we bought an existing practice as our 3rd location. My wife's a pediatric dentist, so we practice separate businesses side by side. So we're a true, husband-wife team and pedo ortho team. So pedo ortho is a big passion of mine as well.
Right.
But it's been a fun ride.
So does she practice in all 3 locations, or does she have an associate? But you guys work pedo ortho in all 3 locations.
We do. So we're branded separately, but we're in the same locations.
Right. It's a great setup for both of you.
Yes.
You don't share chairs per se, but you share many patients, I'm sure. There's a back and forth relationship on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
And, one of our 3 offices, we're very much like you. We had Doug and I, my partner, we had 2 de novos, one in 2015, one in 2016, and then we acquired a very small one in 2018. Yeah. But people in one of our offices, where we have a very good relationship with a pediatric dentist who refers a lot of patients. And everybody out there says, oh, get a pedo, you'll kill it. And what people don't realize is that new pedos don't have any patients to refer to you for like the first 5. They'll send you a gazillion 6-year-olds for the first 5 years. And legitimately, we're in year 6. And right now, all those patients who referred at the very beginning are just starting to get ready for ortho. So people seem to think, oh, I'll just throw pedo into my practice. Would you agree with that statement that if you're bringing pedo in because you expect to see a big boom to your practice in the first 2, 3, 4 years, that maybe things might be a little different with a brand new de novo pedo practice?
Without a doubt. I lived it, and it took minimum 5 years, but I think you're right. Figuring they're referring every 7-year-old that walks through the door, you've got at least 5 years till those kids are of orthodontic age. So it was lean for a little bit in terms of conversions coming from her office, but it's been gangbusters from year 5 on. So as long as you can play the long game, you'll be good.
Exactly. And again, it's just one of those things people say, oh my gosh, look how big someone's gotten in 2 or 3 years because they had pedo. Sure, you'll get some phase 1 starts. And, if you do an airway and sleep disorder breathing stuff, you'll see some kids from that. But it really is, you're helping the pedo a lot more than the pedo is helping you for the first 3 to 5 years, unless you're in a very undersaturated area where, you have a lot of 7, 8, 10, 12-year-olds who need it. But typically, they're already seeing a pedo. They're not going to come to the de novo unless there's some really good reason to do that, correct?
Exactly.
Cool. And so you started these practices, and just for timeline's sake, you started your first one in 2007, so 15 years ago. How long after that did you open your second?
Second one we opened in 2016.
Okay.
And then the third one in 2018.
So you went a long time. You went about 9 years before you went from 1 to 2, and then very quickly went to number 3 when you acquired it.
Yep.
So you probably were like a lot of folks like myself, where you had one person at the beginning who answered phones, assisted, did the whole 9 yards. And now, 15 years later, how many employees do you have?
I think we are about to cross the 50 threshold.
Cross the 50-yard line. Right on, man.
Exactly.
You're in enemy territory.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you started with 1. You're now
who is still with me, by the way, which is amazing. So
your first one's still with you, which is amazing. Yeah. And my question for you is, were there natural points along the way where you went from 1 to 50, where along the way you found natural scaling points where you go, I'll give you an example. We're not as big as you are. Doug and we probably have about 30 or so employees. If you include the call center, maybe one or two more, three more. But we found that, when we had 2, 3, 4 employees, it was a piece of cake. It wasn't that challenging. And then when we hit probably somewhere around 8 or 10 employees, it became a little more challenging. When we had our second space that we opened up, it certainly became far more challenging at that point. But what was your process when you went along? Or at one place it was smooth sailing and never really had a challenge?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's funny. You just touched on, for me, I think it was more about when we opened another location, when physically I was not in. I'm a control freak. I'm getting better as I get older about delegating more and trying to micromanage less. But consultants have made a lot of money off of me as I try to continually get better at that. But when I wasn't physically in the space, so when we opened a second location and I brought in another doctor, and all of a sudden there are patients being seen when I wasn't there, I think that's when it was really a pain point for us, because now I'm not the only one training. I have to be able to delegate that. And that's why some of our training systems came into place and really just making sure everything is scalable and repeatable. So I don't think it was number of employees as much as a second location for me.
I agree with you. And I'm lucky enough that I got Doug as my partner. So when I was in one location, he was in another. But again, you're not the same person training at both locations.
Right.
So
exactly.
it's kind of like making cookies. If you've got this complicated chocolate chip cookie recipe, you both might have the same recipe, but if one person puts a little bit more sugar in it than the other one, or a little bit more chocolate chips, or a little bit more whatever you're putting in it, suddenly they don't taste exactly the same. Something's a little bit different. And so I totally know where you're coming from. Now, you made a comment about consultants. Just out of curiosity, how much money would you say you've spent on consultants in your career? What would be your best guess?
I mean, a couple 100,000 at least. I mean, probably getting closer to 300 or 400, I would imagine.
I figured in my career, my 30 years, I've probably spent about $500,000 on consultants, right? And I want to just pause for a moment and talk about that, because I see a theme in the best practices out there, the best consultants out there, unless somebody is really gifted as a human being, unless you're a Ben Fishbein, right? I'll give him a shout out here. He's just a gifted kind of guy. We had him on a podcast a while back, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. He just sees things differently than most. But for most of the better practices I know, there's no hesitation to bring in a consultant. Right. And all too often, I think one of the bigger mistakes I hear younger doctors make is, well, I'm not going to spend on a consultant. Maybe one day when I have more money, right? Yep. I always love that one. And so were you bringing consultants in early in your career? And if so, where was the first place you felt you needed to bring somebody in?
Yeah, I think we started working with our first consultant almost right away. Maybe at the end of year one. A lot of it for us was schedule templating. Was a big thing where we went from, okay, we can just put patients wherever they want because quite frankly, we don't have any, to now we have to get smarter about how we utilize our schedule. And then marketing for me, I never took a business or a marketing class in my life. I was a science major in college and had no idea what to do. And that was the big thing when I realized I needed some advice there. And we've moved on through the years. I mean, now I've been working with Dino Watt for a while, and we're focused on culture, right? You mentioned pain points. Not that I'm an expert on the TC process. We worked with Leanne Panici for a while, and we utilize a lot of her systems. I think we're pretty good at it, but we could always get better. But what we realized that we really needed as we grew as a group, and when we're spread out over 3 locations, was how do you continue to build that culture and communication style and all of that? And Dino's been awesome. So, we went from schedule templating and marketing, then focusing on maybe the new patient process in the middle as we were trying to grow. And then now we're focused more on the practice culture piece and the human element of it.
Yeah. And everybody needs help in different spots. And I've had people in culture, leadership, scheduling, new patient. And it's interesting how you just take a little piece from one, you take a little marketing, right? Yep. And without that, again, they're gifted individuals, but I'm not one of them. And I'm most certainly not the smartest guy in the room. But it's important to really invest in yourself, invest in your practice. And if you do the right thing, it should come back to you 100-fold over the course of your career.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a
Yeah.
doubt.
And so now what's interesting is you have an associate with you, right?
Two.
Two. You have two associates,
Yep.
team of 50. And now the interesting thing is you find yourself on the other side of the curtain, if you will, helping others grow their practices, right? And do you want to talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's probably been about 10 years that I've been doing a lot of lecturing, starting, small study clubs and that sort of thing. And then I think I've been at about the last 7 AAOs, and then most of the regional meetings at this point. And then most recently, about 4 years ago, we kind of stumbled upon at the end of an AAO lecture. I forget which one it was. It might have been Orlando. I just got bombarded with implementation questions where it was not just, hey, what do you use for this, but how do you use it? And can I look under the hood and see more about your systems? And it was one of my team members who was fielding all of these questions that said, wait, I can't do this anymore. We have to bring people into the office. And at that point, we had our first, again, probably 5 years, I would say, our first in-office course, where we started bringing people in to learn with us, with patients, with our systems. And that's been a really fun journey ever since.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's 2 points there that you talk about that are worth discussing for a second.
Yeah.
Number one, you started speaking to small study clubs and, little by little. And for everybody out there, this guy is not just an amazing manager. He's a clinical stud as well. He lectures around the world for American Ortho, right?
I do some lecturing with American. Yep.
Yeah. So, you're talking to somebody who's not just looking to just pound out, cases. He really cares about his clinical side as well. And I think that's important to a lot of people. But what's interesting to note is, number one, people might see you on stage and go, oh, that guy's so lucky. He's traveling to Budapest or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? People don't understand how many hours go into you honing your craft before you start speaking around at bigger meetings. And now AAO is a little different, right? You could be invited to an AAO, if someone heard your name out there or something, but it's remarkable how many hours of time. So this is just like a kudos to you. Because, when Michael Jordan sinks a 3-pointer or Steph Curry nowadays, it looks so easy, but nobody realizes the amount of hours that go into training to do that. And so that's number one. So kudos to you for what you're doing. I spoke at a few AAOs. I'd love to speak at this year's, and I had to step out because they moved it to May. And my twins and my twins are graduating high school, and my oldest is graduating college. All the weekend.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm almost an empty nester. But I was really looking forward to lecturing, presenting at AAO, and it's a bummer I can't be there just because it's usually not a May lecture, end of May, and it's graduation weekend, unfortunately. So I'm sorry I won't get to see you speak there. So that's number one. And number two, the important part is when people put on courses like the one you put on, it's not people like, oh yeah, he's trying to make a lot of money or whatever they might say. I'm not saying you, but It's interesting how many dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of hours, people spend behind the scenes answering questions for free. Yes. Right? Like when I get on stage and I speak about clinical photography or systems or any number of things, I'll get dozens and dozens of questions, and you don't want to not answer them. But when you do, it takes so much time. And so kudos to you for recognizing that your time is valuable and that you can reach a broader audience by having a course rather than just answering one question at a time and never really getting it anywhere.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the big thing for us, it's never been about money. And quite frankly, if you look at a profit and loss statement, if you add in my time, we lose money every time we do this. We're looking more for, break even points and the ability to compensate my team for their time when it comes to this. It really was just my desire to help people. We had to find a way where we could bring people in an organized fashion because I'm that kind of guy where I was like, oh yeah, just come out. And then my staff would look at me. They're like, we've had doctors here like every week, for the last 5 weeks. And then they know when there are doctors there and I've got a full schedule of patients, we are always, and I never run behind normally. If I've got a doctor there and I'm teaching, I'm, at least 30 minutes behind, which, is my patients don't like, my staff doesn't like, quite frankly, I don't like, but, it's the way that it was working. This has allowed us to do it in a really organized, streamlined, and quite frankly, people get more out of it because we have time to actually sit and chat. Awesome. And it's been great.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your course and more specifically, let's get into some systems a little bit. So when you gave your lecture at the AAO and people came running over and were really bombarding you with questions, was there one system that people seem to really get stuck on and go, wow, how did you do this? Or tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, for us now, especially, it's our virtual treatment platform. So one of the things that I serendipitously stumbled upon prior to COVID was utilizing virtual orthodontic visits almost as a marketing gimmick, to be honest with you. It was a marketing tool for us to be able to kind of grab patients at the time when all the DIY stuff was in vogue. Nice to see that it's not so much anymore.
Yeah.
But it was a way to just it was a lead capture, right? Like anything else. But we had these systems in place where all of a sudden we had to pivot and we needed to see many of our patients virtually when we were closed for 9 weeks in New Jersey. We kind of stumbled upon, holy cow, we're glad we have this system. Let's put it on steroids and let's make it work for us for other appointment types that maybe we didn't use it for before. And then we're not out of this yet, especially in our part of the country, but we, for the most part, I think we're nearing the end. We're certainly back to normal patient flows. We kind of said, wait, what did we learn about virtual visits? What did people enjoy about it? What did we enjoy about it? What efficiencies did we gain from it? And we pivoted and we now use it, for example, for every other observation visit. We use it for every single retainer check, which has been amazing. So, depending on, we're debonding, I think 1,300 patients a year. That's 1,200 appointments that I no longer need to do. So talk about freeing up a schedule. It's been huge for us. So,
remarkable. You just had a large percentage of the listenership eyeballs just fall out of their head when you said 12 or 1,300 debonds a year. It's a great number, though. I mean, it's wonderful. And so, are you at liberty to share any little bit about your virtual protocol before COVID? What were you doing? Were you using some remote monitoring software? How was your stuff working before COVID that allowed you to dovetail into it so easily?
Yeah, really, it's not as complex as what people might think from a software perspective. It's the programming and the customization that goes on behind the scenes. So we use, and we still use, an asynchronous virtual visit app from Clear Partnering Group. I mean, there's a few out there that a lot of people are using, essentially texting a HIPAA compliant link. Patients click on it. They answer some questions that we set up for them ahead of time. They take some pictures with their smartphone. That comes back to us. We're able to evaluate the pictures. But for me, it's the ability to auto-populate. I don't like things that take me more than about 30 seconds to do. If I have to type a detailed report out, and it takes me 5 minutes or 10 minutes every time, that's not a good use of my time. Right. So we came up with hundreds of customized, just click and auto-populate for reports in order to communicate with patients and then have it look to them professional and that they really got a formal write-up from us. So we still use that to this day. And then everything that I show at the course is how that all works on the back end, and showing people and giving people all of the customization that we do.
Nice. Yeah. I recently asked a question on Orthopreneurs, and we had hundreds and hundreds of responses. And it was, what percentage of your practice is made up of virtual consultations? And I think the overwhelming majority, when I say overwhelming majority, again, I don't remember the exact numbers. If you're on there ever, you can go look and see. But if I'm not mistaken, I think something like over 90% of the people have less than, less than 5% of their practice is virtual consults.
When you say consults, the new patient exam piece specifically?
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. For us, the new patient exam is still, it's a marketing tool. It simply is grabbing patients, starting the discussion. I do believe, and there's data to support this, that some people just want to know, are they a candidate? Am I a candidate for orthodontics? Am I a candidate for clear aligners? Do you have flexible financing options? Like basic questions before they come to our office and spend an hour with us.
Right.
That's all we're doing. We're still doing, we shorten the exam. We do a 30-minute in-office exam as opposed to a 60-minute in-office exam because we gathered more information ahead of time. But for the most part, it's simply that's a marketing tool. I think it's all the other visits where you really see the power, and it's not for everybody. But if you really believe in efficiency and in conserving appointments, I think it's huge, and our patient response has been phenomenal to it.
But your new patient quote unquote exam is still a new patient exam, right? Like if you said to me how many new patients came into my practice last year through a virtual exam, and I'm doing air quotes when I say that, 20, 25, a minuscule number compared to the number of patients I have throughout the year. So you've managed, even though you don't call it an exam per se, right? You're doing a consult initially, and they're coming in for other reasons. I have no doubt that that's been a big impact on your practice. But so again, I don't know what you're at liberty to share and not share, but how many days a week do you see patients personally?
Me personally, at this point, 2 is the goal.
So you see two, and how many patients would you say you see a day?
Average is about 65.
And that is solely as a result of your ability to do remote exams, correct?
I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I mean, I think, which part of that was?
Well, you have 12 to 1,300 D-bonds a year, right?
I've got 2 associates.
Right. I understand that, but 12 to 1,300 D-bonds a year. How many days a week, doctor days, do your associates work?
They each do 4. So
you've got a total of 10 doctor days a week, right?
Yep.
4, and 2, give or take. And so you figure for 1,300 D-bonds over 50 weeks, right? Just using rough numbers, that's going to come out to what? 25, 26 D-bonds a week, give or take.
Sounds about right.
1,300 divided by 50 would be 26. Yep. So that's 26 D-bonds a week. For 2 associates and a doctor working 2 days a week, to me, those are pretty solid numbers and would indicate to me, I would expect a much fuller schedule when you're in the office, unless they're seeing 110 patients a day, in which case then I say, good work, Dan. Way to go.
Well, you're hitting on the other thing that I'm incredibly passionate about that I would chalk this up to more, and that's efficient clinical systems.
Right. There had to be something there.
Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, when I hear numbers, that the average orthodontic case, if you look at Gauge, is 18 visits or 20 visits. Our average is 9 or 10. Right. Our aligner cases are 7. We're very efficient with our mechanics, and I think
that was going to be my question. Is it a question about mechanics, or is it a question about observation through remote monitoring? Right. So to me,
both.
That's my point when we were talking about remote monitoring was the number of appointments per patient was crystal clear to me. You were not seeing people 16, 18 times, right? Not for the number of D-bonds you're doing. And so it was crystal clear that you had something was helping you along. Obviously, great mechanics help a ton, but if you're doing aligners, and I mean, do you have a typical aligner protocol in terms of visits, or do you do a remote monitoring sort of thing where you bring them in when they're ready?
Yeah, no, and then I don't know if I guess we're talking about product names. I don't use dental monitoring. I'm fascinated by it. I've seen Barry Glazer lecture a bunch on it, and every time I see it, I'm intrigued. I do not use that as of now. So our aligner patients are coming in every 10 weeks. So we do 1 week changes, and they're still coming in every 10 weeks.
Which is typical.
But it's on my radar, and it's one of those things. Depending on how 2022 goes, if I can find some bandwidth to implement a new system, that might be one that we would look into for our aligner patients. Yeah,
if you're getting your aligner cases done in 7 visits, you're doing your basic cases, wire and bracket, in 9 to 10. You're already there. I mean, your dollars per visit are tremendous, which is the name of the game. And I hate to say it because a couple of years ago, the buzzword was vulnerability. Now the buzzword is efficiency, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about efficiency. And so in your course, do you talk about the actual clinical efficiencies that you use, as well as just, the remote aspect of it is one part of it, but do you talk about the clinical efficiency?
We do. Yeah. Both in brackets and in aligners as well.
Nice. And I know this is kind of a loaded question, but I have to ask anyway. Do you feel like anybody by the way, I have to ask because someone's going to, are you a self-ligating guy or are you a twin guy?
I am. Empower, dual activation, and self-ligation.
Okay. So
and I am a key opinion leader.
We're done. I can't talk to you anymore. You dirty Dirty, silent killer. I knew it, Dan. For those who are not aware, we always joke about the fact that these key opinion leaders kill themselves to give good, honest opinions. The overwhelming majority, and there's a small vocal minority out there that would make you believe that they should be locked up. But I apologize. So you're predominantly, almost entirely a self-ligating practice?
100%.
Okay, so I know this is a tough question because, again, you and I would agree with the fact that good mechanics can be found in almost any system, right? Yes. Like we've seen it from segmental mechanics to, self-ligating twin, what have you. Yep. But do you feel like you could be as efficient doing what you're doing with a twin bracket?
Yeah, and for the record, that's not a loaded question. And my claim to fame is that I gave a lecture to a Tweed group utilizing self-ligation mechanics. So there's nothing anybody could ever throw at me.
And you're still here to talk about it.
Yes. And all my board cases were SL. So I'm good. You can throw whatever you want.
The problem is that they put them into 8 different versions of cervical pole headgear that day.
Yeah. So no, my thing is when I lecture, I talk about chocolate and vanilla, right? And we all have our preferences. And I think early self-ligation marketing was so armed with dogma that right and wrong, that this is the right way to do it versus the wrong way or the better way to do it or the faster way. I don't believe any of that. What I believe is that there are fundamental differences in the way that teeth respond to tooth movement between twin and with SL. I happen to prefer what I see with self-ligating brackets and the way that we utilize them. Yeah. So could you have similar efficiencies? You definitely could. I mean, if you're steel tying every tooth, at the initial and you can let the patient go for 10 weeks and know that everything is fully engaged, maybe. For me, I like knowing the door is fully closed and the wire is fully engaged, no matter what. And I don't have to worry about how people are tying them in. Is the one assistant doing a loose O-ring and the other one's doing a figure 8 and the other one's steel tying everything? Right. My assistants all close the doors the same way. So I know exactly how it's going to respond. And every one of those, one assistant not tying in an O-ring correctly or as tight as you want, and all of a sudden you're not going into an 018. We're 014, 018, 2020, and an 1825 steel to finish. One mistake, one tooth that's not fully ligated, that patient comes back and there's still a rotation, I've lost my efficiency. So for me, I couldn't practice the same way. Doesn't mean somebody else couldn't.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I am not a KOL for any bracket company right now. The joke between Doug and I was that when we took over our practice, when I bought my practice, the first one, the de novo, it was really a de novo because it had 20 patients that had been started by somebody else. It was an empty practice. And I built it. I went through 7 different brackets for a series of reasons, 7 different manufacturers over a 4.5-year period. And I never really got a chance to really enjoy any one of them. And there's a whole variety of reasons why that happened. But once I got to self-ligating, I just realized I would never go back to twin. Not because it moves teeth better, not because the mechanics. I do believe that initial crowding, and I think the literature would bear it out, that initial crowding does unwind a little quicker. And I do think there are trade-offs you have later in treatment if you're using a passive self-ligating, or at least some of the older versions of it. But once I went to self-ligating for exactly what you talked about, I could never go back to twin because I would see those patients who could pick off the O-rings, and all of a sudden 5 teeth were not tied in because the kid figured out how to use a fork to pull them off or whatever it may be. And so, I just love the way you put that. Now, before we go here, if I was going to sign up for your course, what is it called, first of all?
Yeah, so it's Innovative Orthodontic Solutions.
iOS.
iOS, yeah. And the website is iorthosolutions.com.
iorthosolutions.com. And just so everybody out there understands, there are not that many seats. He does not do, 1,000-person hotel ballroom courses. What he's doing is an in-office course, like many of the great people out there teaching, an in-office course that's limited to about how many people per course?
30 people.
Does that include staff as well?
It does. It does.
So if I wanted to come with me and Doug and bring 28 staff members, everybody else is out of luck.
You would sell out the whole course. Yes.
Yeah. So sorry, folks. I'm kidding. But just know that this is not a course that you're just going to sign up for a week or two. Because what people, and I don't know if we've talked about this, Dan, what the regular orthodontist doesn't realize is that you can put on a course that's the greatest course in the world and everybody can learn about it. And then nobody signs up until like 3 weeks before the course or 4 weeks before the course. You're like, how do you book out your schedule so that you can do this 3 weeks in advance? Summit sells 50% of the tickets to Summit are sold within a week of Summit finishing. And the other 50% seem to be sold within like 5 weeks of Summit coming up. And so if you're one of those who waits for a course to fill, to get close, don't sign up now, because you do this once a year, right?
Once a year. We might move it to twice a year next year. We're debating. We're about halfway sold out already and the course is not until September, but I'm lecturing at the Dolphin users meeting next month. Yeah. Typically when I do that, it sells out there. That's what's happened the last couple of times.
And so here's the beautiful thing. You can listen to Dan speak at Orthopreneurs Summit in the week after Labor Day. Roughly the 9th, 10th of September. And then you can go see him in office, just south of Philly the week afterwards and really get some great, deeper dives there. But it sounds to me like it's all about systems. But if I could ask you for the 30-second elevator pitch, and I said, tell me why should I attend this course? What will I get out of it? What's your pitch?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is to see complex systems in action. So we've got virtual orthodontic visits, paperless new patient processes, modern marketing, two-way text messaging, tech-driven office design. So a lot of this is about ergonomics and how we design our office, digital workflows. So we're using 3D scanners for all of our appliances. So we dive into that a little bit. And then the clinical efficiencies that we talked about as well. So both with brackets and wires, but also with clear aligners.
Right on. I got one last question for you before I let you go.
Yes, sir.
Because I know how efficient you are. And I think one of the biggest inefficiencies we find in our practices are patient compliance, right? It's elastics. Do you tackle that in any special way in your practice? Do you stay away from them and simply use non-compliant appliances? How do you tackle those, 3 millimeters out of class 1 kind of kids, 11, 12-year-olds coming in? And do you do something differently to help finish those in 9 or 10 visits?
Yeah. I mean, we always start with elastics. I mean, obviously we're not talking about surgical cases here. We're talking about dental class 2s. We start with elastics. We obviously positive reinforcement goes a long way. And then if not, we use forceps for our class 2 correction.
How much time do you give them? Do you give them one visit?
Oh yeah. No, we nip it in the bud pretty quickly. And then, like a lot of people, we're not, I don't want to yell at people all the time. So when I'm not good at it, it doesn't fit my personality type. So once we sense that a kid's not going to wear them, we'll quickly transition to any patient that has over 50% overjet, over 50% class 2 molar. We are putting bands on the upper 6s in case we need a class 2 corrector.
I was about to ask you, how do you keep those visits down if you got to put forces in? Now you got to ban them. We
do that. So 50% class 2, we call them class 2 bands. They get them, right from the start.
And then just pop forces in there, and now you're done.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, I really appreciated the time we've had here today, because you've just given us a little glimpse into efficiencies. And again, I think that is the buzzword right now, is efficiencies. And efficiencies run to more than just clinical, right? We always talk about clinical efficiency, but it sounds like anybody who attends your course is also going to get a lot of administrative efficiencies, which I really appreciate. So on behalf of everybody out there, I just want to say thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Anybody who wants to come to you is iorthosolutions.com, correct?
Yep, that's for the course. Yep.
Yeah. And of course, if they want to find you online, what is your website for your practice?
It is iortho.com. Quick and easy.
iortho.com.
Yeah.
I know another guy out there who uses something like iortho. I just love it because I love Anila Dickel. He's a great guy. iortho is the name of his practices, correct? So I was going to say, why didn't he take iortho.com when it was available? And the answer is because it wasn't.
Yeah, he would be the first to tell you that I was there first. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to
and
clear that up.
A very close personal friend. So.
Before anybody asks, iortho.com came from Dr. Dan Bills, but iOrtho Solutions is where you go if you want to learn more about this course. And I'm telling everybody out there, I'm signing up now so you can't get my spot. So Dan Bills, I want to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being here. Thank you for your contribution to orthodontics. For anybody who wants to see this man speak in at Summit, just go to opsummit2022.com and sign up. He will be among one of the many amazing speakers who are going to be speaking there. But I, for one, can't wait to go see him at his own in-office course, because I've been to a few and I get so much out of them. And so
awesome.
Thanks again, Dan, and just wishing you a great day and keep on innovating, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. It was a pleasure.